All right, folks, welcome into the latest edition of the Last Word on Sports Media podcast. I am the somewhat competent host, TJ Rives. Hello to my co-host, Mike Gill, with much to go over off of a weekend of the NFL draft and what I have dubbed the Shedeur Sanders telethon that went on for the better part of about 60 hours or so until he was finally drafted on Saturday after the draft began on Thursday night. We're ready to talk about that. Everything else in and around the draft, Bill Belichick, his nearly 50 years younger girlfriend being in the middle of his media tour for his book. Is this whole thing going to implode with the University of North Carolina? We're going to talk about that, NBA playoffs, and much more. Hello, Mike Gill, based in Atlantic City. I'm here in hot, steamy West Central Florida already in late April, Mike Gill. You're up there in Atlantic City, the host of the Sports Bash 5 days a week in the afternoon on the ESPN radio affiliate. 97.3 ESPN up in Atlantic City. Good to be with you, my friend, and chop up some sports media topics for a little while here on a Tuesday as we do this live. How are things?
Yeah, everything's good. Not quite as hot and steamy here, but very nice. Supposed to be around 80 degrees. But yeah, sat in and watched a lot of draft this weekend. Interested to see what other people – how do you consume the draft? ESPN, NFL Network, maybe on the radio, ABC. So the draft, the ratings, we'll take a look at all that stuff. Very intrigued by how everybody consumed the Shedeur Sanders telethon.
What about for you? Did you mainly stick with ESPN? Did you go back and forth to the NFL Network? Were you on the radio coverage some, either Sirius XM or ESPN Radio, et cetera?
So I'm in ESPN generally. I went ESPN and kind of watched their coverage. And I think it's more out of habit than anything else that I kind of go down that route. That's just the habit of, hey, ESPN's got the coverage. There we go. Put it on. Watched a little bit of NFL Network, kind of flipped back and forth for a little bit here. And I did drive in the car and was Saturday, was in the car a lot. So I did hear a lot of ESPN radio's coverage. Chris Carlin anchors that coverage. Jordan Reed, who's kind of like their one of their draft guys for the website. You see him from time to time this time of the year. So, yeah, I consumed it. But mostly ABC, I didn't check in at all. I almost forgot that ABC had the coverage.
Right. And again, we laid out that that's more of the stories, the college players themselves, as much as the NFL teams and the executives on the ESPN coverage. They kind of balance it out that way as different reasons to watch. I was more of an NFL Network person, to be honest, with Rich Eisen, Charles Davis, who's fantastic, by the way. Love him. Need more of him. And I'm not just saying that because I'm friends with the guy. He's tremendous with the insight, the one-liners, the pop culture references. Joel Klatt, also very good. Daniel Jeremiah on that show. And that's not to say that ESPN with Mike Greenberg and with Mel and with Booger McFarland and company on ESPN's coverage with Adam Schefter kind of as the newsbreaker, that they don't do a good job. But I think for a lot of people, they do default to ESPN on everything. And ESPN has, again, televised this thing for 45 years and counting, going back to Bob Lee and then eventually Chris Berman, both being the lead hosts, and then Trey Wingo for a while, and now Mike Greenberg in recent years as well. All right, so we've got so much to dive into. I mean, one of the first things is, is it overlooking? Is it snubbing? Is it slighting? Since when does the number one pick, who's a quarterback, get so little coverage? I realize it's Nashville and the Titans, but you almost don't even know that Cam Ward got drafted number one overall when the lineage of the number one overall pick. What's up with that, Mike Gill? I mean, they paid attention 55 times more to Shedeur Sanders right off the bat than Cam Ward being picked by the Titans right away in the draft Thursday night.
Well, there's a couple things. Number one, it's not a great quarterback class. So you were really talking about two guys that were, Shedeur Sanders, who ends up going in the fifth round, more on that, and then Cam Ward, who, had kind of been all over the place. He's a guy that started his college career at Incarnate Word. I mean,
correct.
Like, who knew this guy was really? It wasn't like a highly publicized, hey, this guy's going number one. You just kind of thought, okay, he's the number one pick. Just not a high-profile guy, even though he played at Miami. And then he doesn't get the 15 minutes or 10 minutes of promotion of him being number one and his story and everything, because there's a major trade that breaks as he's walking to the podium. And then you can debate whether or not ESPN should have waited to announce the trade, give this guy his props, his moment. I don't know. I mean,
they didn't even talk to him live on ESPN TV. He's the number 1 overall pick. I submit to you, they wanted to move on to the trade, and Travis Hunter got picked next by Jacksonville after the trade. He's the Heisman winner. He's much more known. I get it. But if this had been a New York team, the Jets or the Giants, if this had been the LA Rams making that pick, if this had been the Cowboys, for God's sake, do we think that it gets glossed over when it's the Titans or it's a smaller market? The Jaguars, pick a smaller market one, the Carolina Panthers. If they're picking number 1,
I don't know, because you just mentioned Jacksonville, and when Trevor Lawrence went number 1, there was a big hoopla because he was a huge college star.
That's right.
Trevor Lawrence was a huge college star. Cam Ward was not a huge college star, even though he might have been the best quarterback. Miami's just an average program at this stage. They're not the U that they were. And I think if you casual football fans who aren't college football fans said, where did Cam Ward go to school? They probably didn't even know. I mean, he's not a high-profile, what was he, 4th in the Heisman?
Something like that. And he had been at Washington State. Miami did get to, I think, 8-0 or 9-0, and they were in the mix for the college football playoff. Ultimately didn't make it. They lost a couple of games at the end of the year. But you make a good point. I mean, when it's Peyton Manning and Tennessee had the success that they had, although Tennessee never won the Southeastern Conference, never won the national championship, and by the way, Peyton Manning never won the Heisman. But when you look at the history of the number 1 overall pick, Cam Newton was the Heisman winner. Auburn did win the national title. You look at Troy Aikman. Now, granted, UCLA didn't win anything. Aikman didn't win the Heisman, but he was the number 1 overall pick of who? The Cowboys. Mm-hmm. So that tends to make a difference.
Yeah, but you just mentioned Peyton Manning went to Indianapolis, not the same division as Nashville. And by the way, Nashville is a pretty popular, vacation spot. It's a party town, so it's not a big market. But Indianapolis, not the biggest market either. I think it's more the player than it is the franchise. This could have been the I don't know which franchise would we. Jacksonville is probably the least high profile. Maybe Seattle, since it's so far out there, but
right.
You can't get much more low.
Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, and that was the number 1 overall pick. And then Baker Mayfield, of course, is now in Tampa Bay, but he was the number 1 overall pick by Cleveland.
And that was a good quarterback class, though, where there was decisions to be made, where there was multiple quarterbacks. This was a slam dunk that this was the guy, and there really wasn't a number 2. And I think the bigger story was what was going to happen after him. Sanders, Hunter, all that stuff was actually bigger than the quarterback for once. I mean, which is not normal.
Not normal. All right, so let's segue to that. I've said a lot already about the Shedeur Sanders stuff. We're going to play a couple of clips here on the Last Word on Sports Media podcast. And by the way, if you're only on social media here with us as we do this on Tuesday, we're also a podcast. Apple, Spreaker, Spotify. Go find the podcast feed. By the way, I should have made mention at the top, we did a tribute to ESPN's Mike Patrick, their legendary play-by-play man for the NFL, major college basketball and football, as well as the women's NCAA Final Four championships for so many years. We did a great tribute with our buddy Phil DeMont-Mullen, who you did the Announcer Schedules podcast with for the better part of about 3 years. Ken Fang of Awful Announcing, we did a great tribute. That's on the pod feed. Go check it out, Apple, Spreaker, Spotify, Last Word on Sports Media podcast. And if you are hearing us only on the pod feed, come see what we look like. Mike Gill's Twitter handle at the Mike Gill Show. Find me at Buck Sideline Guy, Mike Gill Show YouTube page. You can see the show right here. All right, so then the attention turned to Shedeur Sanders. And all I will say in blanket is just complete overkill, like a nuclear bomb of coverage about him. Where's he going to get drafted? And then the analysts began to lose their minds. Mel Kiper on ESPN, Joel Klatt on the NFL Network on why is everybody passing on him night 1. That turned into night 2 in the second and the third round with nobody taking him. So, Mike, give me your take here. I mean, it was too much. It was way too much and overblown on one guy. And it almost seemed like ESPN was stoking this to try to get more people to watch, keep the controversy going. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think we forget sometimes this is a TV show, right? This is a TV show, and I don't know what the back-to-back record viewership. Thursday and Friday was the most watched NFL draft outside of the pandemic year in 2020 when no one could leave their house. You had record viewership, and I think a lot of this was because this guy's dropping. This is a TV show, and their job is to, it's like a program director sitting down with the host and saying, play the hits.
That's exactly right.
This was the hit right
if you're
here.
in music radio, baby, play the hits. Whatever the format is, play the hits. Don't play the obscure stuff, play the hits. And this was clearly the hit to keep playing, to keep debating as he continued to slide. All right, so by the time we got to Saturday, it almost became a comedy show, almost like the Saturday Night Live sketch, right down to Shedeur being prank phone called. Can we make this up, Mike Gill? Being prank phone called and it being put on the internet with the son of the Falcons offensive coordinator, Jackson Ulbrich, prank called Deion's son, Shedeur, and put it on the internet. This thing took on a life of its own by Saturday afternoon. He finally was drafted in the 5th round. And at that point, Mel Kiper went off for about the 3rd time about all of this. And we're now going to play it on the Last Word on Sports Media podcast. You probably have seen something about this or maybe heard the clip, but here you go, where Mel has had enough about why didn't Deion get drafted. And then you're going to hear and see from Louis Riddick of ESPN, who's been in NFL front offices before, Mike Gill, and Reese Davis, the host, chime in. This was great back and forth reality TV with their opinions. Here you go from the ESPN and ABC coverage Saturday.
This is not about can you play the position. This is about, do we want you to play the position for us? That's what this.
Why wouldn't they, Lou?
Well, look, that's a whole nother discussion that we've had in many different ways for weeks
I would say
and
that
months now.
This is not one of the toughest quarterbacks you've
But Mel, this isn't about. This isn't about quarterback traits and quarterback characteristics, personal football character. That's not about this. This is personal.
Has he had an off the field issue? No, he has not.
Mel, you don't have to sell it to me.
No, I don't know what we're talking about here.
You're right. You're right. Yes, you're right. But you know what? The draft has spoken.
That's right. That's the key, Mel. It's not putting a value judgment on whether those who passed were right or wrong. They did.
Yep.
So now, whenever you're in circumstances in life, whether you like them, whether you don't like them, whether they're fair or whether they're unfair, you might have to deal with them.
That's right.
Now Shedeur Sanders has to deal with
everything.
And for whatever reason, whether he played a minute, microscopic percentage, 0%, or it's a legitimate criticism of the way he conducted himself during the draft process, this was the result.
Yeah.
Now he has an opportunity to answer it. I think yelling at the NFL about it is not.
There's not a quarterback. Boomer Esiason was not happy when he was a 2nd-round pick.
Tom Brady was not happy.
They dropped. How'd they turn out?
And you know what?
My point, nobody's arguing that can happen.
Reese, the NFL has been clueless for 50 years when it comes to evaluating quarterback. Clueless. No idea what they're doing in terms of evaluating quarterback. That's proof. There's proof of that.
So, again, Mel was feisty. Mel was unhinged.
I thought that was his best part. And that was the best part of the whole thing. This is what we talked about last week. They're not critical enough sometimes. This is the best moment. That was at his best, saying the NFL is clueless with quarterbacks, and he's not wrong. They're taking all these guys who are busts. Come on! How many busts do we get in the first round?
A lot of the times they are wrong, including at the top. However, Mel has also been famously wrong.
That's true.
If you search YouTube and search the name Mel Kiper and put the word "wrong" next to it, watch him talking on and on about Jamarcus Russell and how great he's going to be.
A couple years ago, his number one quarterback was Mitch Trubisky.
Correct. Instead of Patrick Mahomes. But I got a couple of other examples. In
that Mahomes draft, he had Mahomes 5th on his list.
Okay, and he went on and on about how Johnny Manziel should be the number 1 overall pick in 2014. Mel Kiper. The whole time leading up to the draft, and as Johnny Manziel slid through the first round and Cleveland eventually took him, Mel was going on and on about Johnny Manziel, who was out of the NFL inside of 3 years. The same Mel Kiper, and I'm banging on him here just to make a point. The same Mel Kiper that said for a month that Blaine Gabbert was a better pro prospect and should be drafted higher than Cam Newton. How did that turn out? Yeah. So he's been famously wrong before, and I liked Riddick's point which is the NFL has spoken here on whether they thought he was a first-round pick or even a day 2 pick. They spoke loudly, and now some interaction with Shedeur and his dad and whoever else, to deconstruct how all of this happened should probably go on for them. He ends up going to Cleveland. I thought this was interesting because there's so many takes that are out there. Chris Carter used to be part of ESPN's coverage, and Chris has been on a couple of other places, also on Fox Sports and their coverage and FS1 and their coverage. So Chris is now on a pod. Everybody's got a pod and a video show called the Fully Loaded Podcast. This is his. And you're going to hear towards the end of this, we're not going to play the whole thing, where he and his co-host go over how Shedeur Sanders messed this up, and Chris is going to tell you why. This is what we want more of, opinion. So I found this podcast on Monday. They put this out on Monday. It's called the Fully Loaded Podcast. We're going to courtesy them. But this was very insightful stuff on Chris Carter saying this is what happens when the entitlement, the social media hype, the hype period overtakes being smart and doing the smart thing to get yourself drafted. So I think you have this queued up. This is, again, we're playing this for the audio audience off of Chris Carter, the former NFL receiving star, the former ESPN and Fox personality on the NFL, doing his own podcast, talking with his co-host about where did Shedeur Sanders screw this up and how did he end up on day 3 in the 5th round. So I will play some of these comments here from him because I thought this was very insightful from a former player's take.
Football. Why wouldn't you sit down with people? And something these kids never understand, even if you're a top 10 pick, you're in the NFL for a long time. Yeah. So your interview, your tape, people in the room that see you, someone can like you in the room. They might not draft you 5-10 years later, man. You're looking for a guy, you're looking to trade, and they remember your interview. Yes. The interview you had. It's a small world. This whole thing with Dion and the media and everything, it's out of control. It did not help him. It helped him make money in college because he got followers, but it actually hurt him as far as him getting a job as an NFL quarterback. You mean as Shedeur, his social media stuff with Shedeur? Yes. It hurt him. Yeah. What else hurt him? I know you've let me tell you what he understands today. Okay. He ain't running shit. Okay? Yeah. Let me tell you what, they taught him a great lesson. Okay. You don't have this figured out. Your dad don't have this figured out. Who's they? NFL, Shedeur, the world. No, who taught you? Said they taught him. I'm just curious. The system. The system. Okay, there's a system out there, man. Okay. You're going for a job interview. So for his job interview, he was so concerned about what his outfit was. His necklace was over $100,000. He hadn't even convinced people that you're the face of our franchise. Matter of fact, he had convinced people that they were better off going in a different direction, even with people who had lesser talent. That's the rub he put on the people. If that's the case, that's a bad interview, bro. No, it is the case. He didn't get drafted right. It's no speculation. We're through the draft. We're through 3 days. He threw away at least $30 to $50 million. At least.
Great stuff. Chris Carter, again, it's called the Fully Loaded Podcast. That's his own venture. Go check out the full interview, but you got the gist of it right there. What's your reaction? Again, the media takes have been everywhere, and Chris has been in the media. And the last point is the important point, which is you didn't just cost yourself for right now. You cost yourself for the next few years tens of millions of dollars, in large part with how you handled yourself, how you ignored teams that might have wanted to draft you later in the first round or in the second or third round. What is your thought, Mike Gill, real quick, and then we'll move off this?
Well, I think it's a good example of, the whole thing. There was a lot in this, number one, the player that was mixed reviews. He didn't have a great arm, wasn't this, that, the other thing. Do you want – there was all the stuff beforehand. He won't play here. He's only going to play there. That doesn't help, right? If you're not – think about this. Caleb Williams, the year before, was talking about he wanted ownership in a team. He was wildly mediocre last year. Can you imagine succumbing to that guy and saying, Oh, my God, we'll give you ownership.
But if I'm not mistaken, there's another number 1 overall pick. Didn't Caleb Williams meet with numerous teams, including it was obvious the Bears were going to more than likely take him, but Caleb Williams met with a bunch of teams. And
yeah, but my
when
point
did
is
the interviews.
He wanted to, and he was the number 1 quarterback in a class that had a lot of quarterbacks.
Right.
And, he had kind of, I want ownership in teams, and that all got poo-pooed. But my point is, he wasn't even that good this year. He was okay, but he wasn't like, hey, I'm changing the franchise. Good. And he's a better prospect than Shedeur Sanders is. So who wants the circus of maybe my dad wants to be the coach of the team? If you're the Giants and I'm Brian Daboll, do I want to draft a quarterback whose dad might take my job?
Who wants the job? Right. That's another good point. All right, so we've spent a lot of time on the Shedeur telethon. We've carried it on. He may not even make the Cleveland Browns, by the way. I mean, he's got to battle Dylan Gabriel, the Oregon quarterback, who's a much more accomplished quarterback in college. You've got Kenny Pickett, another young quarterback who started games in the NFL, including for your Eagles that they traded to Cleveland. So who knows if he even makes the Browns or not. And again, lots of debate.
5 quarterbacks in that room.
Yeah,
you've got Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett. You've now got Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, and there's one other guy. By the way, you have Deshaun Watson there as well.
Right, who's injured. But the bottom line, like Chris Carter said, the bottom line is his dad could not place him as the starting quarterback in the NFL. He could place him at Colorado. He could place him at Jackson State. That's another big part of this, and we'll see if he overcomes. All right, so let's move on to Bill Belichick real quick. This is another thing that we've been teasing, and he is getting set for his first season ever as a college coach, as the head coach at the University of North Carolina. I ask you, Mike Gill, as we sit here in late April, is this thing coming completely unhinged with the nearly 50 years younger girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, who derailed the CBS interview? He's on a book tour interview. He's written a new book about this part of his life, his part of his career. The book, by the way, does not have one single mention of Robert Kraft in the book, which is fascinating. And when CBS, for their CBS morning show to publicize the book, began to ask him about the relationship with Hudson, who's 24 years old, she is literally 48 years younger than him. When they began to ask about her, she stopped the interview, and now it has come out that there was another point in time in which she stopped everything down for 30 minutes because she is supposedly in charge of his media, the internet. There is the female flame on his arm on a red carpet at the NFL honors back during the Super Bowl week. All right, so what do you make of this, and is it just going to unravel? Is it unraveling right now in real time, Mike Gill, for Bill Belichick, with her being in the middle of all of his publicity, his media, social media? What do you make of it?
It is a bizarre situation, the whole thing. I mean, here's a guy who's only known for being this very private, very gruff, very stoic head coach that almost put the fear of God into his players and got the most out of these people because of how buttoned up everything was. And now it almost feels like his life has just been somebody suggested like he's gotten blackmailed or it is a crazy, bizarre story that this is what was thought of to be the greatest head coach potentially in the history of the NFL is now succumb to this story,
or
with
reduced
is a good word. Yes.
Reduced to this. It's beneath him, right? It's beneath what he was, right, as the Super Bowl champion coach.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's put him in such a different light, and I don't know that it's a good light, a bad light, whatever you want to think of the light. The fact that he took this college job, that was a little wonky. Now he's got this 24-year-old girlfriend who's
clearly she is trying to do things not unlike Coach Prime Colorado with the younger crowd, the teenagers, get them to engage, get them to be interested in North Carolina's football program, get them interested in him. He knows nothing about any of that. As you mentioned, buttoned up is not even the right way to put it. It was locked away in a vault with armed guards on allowing anything out. And so, I have said all along, I think this is a short-term thing. It doesn't last more than 2 years. It may only last 1 year at North Carolina. It may unravel here in the first year before they've ever played a game. Because, again, there have been investigations that she's in charge of some kind of production company, and nobody can find any evidence of the production company. She's involved in the internal stuff at the University of North Carolina. I believe this may be wrong. I believe she's got an office in the football offices. It is definitely gone sideways. No one can dispute it has gone sideways already, and they haven't played a game this fall at North Carolina, Mike.
It's bizarre, the whole thing. And then, the fact that CBS had another interview set up with him, and they were like, this thing was so bizarre, we don't even want to talk to the guy again. Like, we're out.
Which the whole thing is trying to publicize the book that he's written while we talk about media. And again, the legacy, so many times in life, not just in sports, in the public life, in life itself, you're remembered for what you did last, for what you did at the end, good and bad. And, Bill Belichick losing games at New England and coming unraveled and basically being fired by Robert Kraft and the Patriots. That's what happened. They fired him with time left on his contract and said, you need to leave. We got to do something else. Now he takes a college job, and if this implodes and unravels, are we not making the argument that we'll remember much more? It's going to be remembered much more for what he did or didn't do here at the end. Mike, you buy that before we move on?
Oh, listen, especially for the younger generation, they're not going to know that this guy was a Super Bowl. It's almost like last night, ironically, I watched the 30 for 30 on Bobby Knight.
Right.
And if you were a fan of his in the 70s and 80s and 90s, you thought, like, this is the greatest coach you ever saw. And,
Amen.
And then if you're a younger generation and you saw him towards the end, you thought this guy, like, what's the hype about this guy? So Belichick's going down that road.
And how he behaved. Exactly. What you do at the end. All right. Great stuff on that. I don't know how that ends, except it may end spectacularly badly coming up with what happens if he no longer wants her around as the final point? Do we think that she goes quietly? I don't think so.
It's almost like you want to see one of these Netflix miniseries on like how this thing, ends up going here. Give me an 8 episode miniseries on this
on
whole
her.
Yeah.
On her
well,
and on them.
Where they met, how they met, all that stuff. And then
by the way, that's what she shut the interview down. She's publicized that they met on an airplane on a flight. She's talked about it in interviews. And why he was not allowed to talk about it on the CBS thing is bizarre. All right, let's move on to a couple of other things. And these are serious things. One of them, we were talking last week, and we did not actually cover Shannon Sharpe, speaking of in real time, being sued by a female accuser, accusing him of sexual assault and misconduct. Sharpe and his lawyer and agent have fired back at the woman. The woman's fired back at them. And now Shannon Sharpe is no longer on ESPN's coverage while this is going on. And how about the fact, Mike Gill, that the lawyer and Sharpe are releasing and pointing out they tried to pay the woman millions of dollars to not go public and to basically go away. She wants more than that. So I believe at this point we've probably seen the last of him on ESPN. You never say never, but what do you read into this? He had been very much a part of their daytime programming through the football season and up until last week, and now is off the air. Real quick.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we'll see Shannon Sharpe again on any of the platforms. I think that's it for him. I mean, the whole thing was bizarre. That's another thing. You had Stephen A. They didn't comment on it at all. No comments from ESPN. Stephen A. goes on his YouTube show. He talks about it for like 20 minutes. I mean, I don't think that helped in any stretch. But I would imagine this is the last we see of Shannon Sharpe. Look, I don't get the whole Shannon Sharpe appeal. I can't believe this guy was as popular as he was. He didn't really
former Super Bowl champion with the Broncos, former Super Bowl champion with the Ravens. And remember, he was on the set with the NFL Today on Sundays for a while on CBS.
I get his resume and everything, but like I don't look at him as I have to watch First Take to hear what Shannon Sharpe has to say.
Right.
So for that reason, I just don't feel to have all of this circulating. I don't think it's a big enough draw to have to. It's not like a show that generates millions of viewers.
Look, they'll have more people watching. They'll have people watching whether he's part of it or not because they rotate in like Michael Irvin and some other people on their shows. So we'll see if he gets his personal life together, but this is ugly. And it's not the first accusation against him. There were accusations as well against him prior during his career, etc. So this is a mess for Shannon Sharpe, and ESPN will probably cut ties.
I would agree. I would think that he will not be now. Will he continue to do his YouTube show in light of all this? That'll be something to keep an eye on as well. Has he done any? I haven't seen. Has he said or done anything?
He stepped away for now.
I am not a consumer of Club
I don't
Shay
see it either. I don't see it either. And you knew the nickname, and I didn't even know the nickname. You just said it. All right, so there's another controversy going on with Fox Sports, and their executive vice president, whose name is Charlie Dixon, is abruptly now gone after being put on leave over a month ago with not just one, but two different lawsuits against him. Females. One is a hairdresser makeup artist whose name is Nushin Faraji, who basically alleges that he sexually harassed her, that Skip Bayless sexually harassed her. She filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Fox Sports, naming this guy at the centerpiece. He's also at the centerpiece, Charlie Dixon, of another lawsuit involving another female, that Julie Binks from Fox Sports, who alleges that he made sexual advances towards her, tried to kiss her, the whole bit. Dixon, who's married, has denied that, but it appears that Fox is about to settle both of these lawsuits. And suddenly on Monday, Mike Gill, Charlie Dixon is out. He's one of the higher executives with Fox. He's one of the guys, the head of programming, one of the two that heads up Fox Sports 1 and their programming. So he is now gone. He's been on leave. He is now gone, and it's believed that Julie Stewart Binks and Faraji are both going to settle their multi-million-dollar lawsuits with Fox. Faraji, by the way, this is interesting now. Faraji has claimed not only that Skip Bayless harassed her, but is named not only Dixon, but Joy Taylor in her lawsuit, and has alleged that Taylor slept with Charlie Dixon to help get her part on their programming as a host. She further alleges that Joy Taylor tried to shut down her lawsuit and told her to get over it and go away. She's named in the lawsuit. So I wonder, is Joy Taylor going to be caught up on this? She's back on the air with Fox Sports 1 and Speak for Yourself. But is she maybe caught up in this settlement, and is she going to maybe be gone? Stay tuned on these settlements.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I'm not a big FS1 consumer at all. I did know the story, and I saw that, once this came out, she was on right afterwards for a couple of days, and then she was removed. The whole story I'm well aware of.
For like 2 or 3 weeks she was removed, but now she's back, Mike, on the show that they do 5 days a week.
Just a bizarre, the whole story is just, and it's it's not surprising stuff. This is people with a lot of money, powerful, and there's no surprise that you hear these type of stories in all walks of life. Everywhere where there's money, power, and
sexual harassment and holding somebody's job over them and the whole story. So again, we look for those lawsuits to be resolved. At least that's the reporting. They're in settlement talks with the two separate lawsuits to solve this, and it's a black eye for Fox. There is no doubt. All right, what do we want to move on to next? Shall we move on to the NBA? How about the NBA playoffs? As we do this show on Tuesday, and again, if you're hearing us in podcast form at a later time, the Lakers are clearly in trouble with the Minnesota Timberwolves. It was a great watch at the end of Sunday as Minnesota knocked off the Lakers in the final seconds with Mike Breen, Doris Burke, and Richard Jefferson on the call. So Minnesota now leads 3-1. For the NBA, their ratings, the attention, social media, all of it, this is trouble if LeBron and the Lakers and Luka and the LA market, if they take a hit here with the Lakers going out. How big a hit, Mike, if the Lakers are done later this week?
Oh, big time. I mean, big time hit. Now, you do have the Knicks that are still in this 3-1. They're up in their series against Detroit, which had a controversial finish the other night. You've got Boston, the defending champs. If Golden State, obviously they're a draw.
They're up 3-1 now too with the win on Monday night over Houston.
Yep.
Boston up 3-1. You likely are going to get Boston and New York playing each other in the East. Golden State still alive. So you have some teams with noteworthy stars in major markets, but the Lakers, the Lakers bring the love-hate factor that the Yankees bring, that the Dallas Cowboys bring, that Alabama football and Duke basketball brings. and we'll see how long they survive.
Oh, there's no question. Whoever has the Western Conference, I don't know if that's ESPN or
I believe it's Turner has it again for
Turner,
this
right? Okay,
year,
on the West
for the Western
side.
Conference Final.
Yeah, they're cheering for they're certainly hoping to get the Lakers in there. But if they can get the Warriors in there, one last hurrah for Steph and Draymond, maybe that will be enough to kind of pull. And if it's if they can get somehow all the way to the Western Conference Finals, that would be a big help.
All right, and again, Boston, the defending champs, about to play the Knicks, it looks like, in the next round. I wanted to play, because this is what we do on the Last Word on Sports Media podcast. Let's play the end of the Golden State-Houston game, courtesy of Turner, TNT, and awful announcing. Here's the clip of Kevin Harlan on the call. Golden State had made a great comeback to take the lead in the final seconds, and they get the one last defensive stop here. And this guy is just magic. When he's calling basketball, football, I get the feeling if Kevin Harlan was reading a menu to us, Mike Gill, it would be exciting and interesting. So this is the end on TNT of the Golden State Monday night game at home in San Francisco with Houston. Kevin Harlan and Reggie Miller on the call. Let's listen to some of this. This is good.
Brooks to inbound. And now Shedeur. Defended by Green for the lead. No! Ripping it off. Rebound inside. Whistle blown. Foul. Rockets.
And Draymond Green wanted all the smoke versus Şengün. There's a reason why he's a former Defensive Player of the Year, a finalist this year for the award. One-on-one, top of the key.
Look at the rebound by Butler, a foul by Jabari Smith of Houston.
So there you go. I mean, that's gold as far as I'm concerned. Again, courtesy of TNT and awful announcing, putting that clip up. I would love just for 1 year to have Harlan and Reggie Miller call the final. I understand for ESPN and economic reasons, they've got the rights. It's their crew. Mike Breen's going to do it with whatever analysts they have with him. But I mean, that is top shelf stuff. Mike, what are your thoughts on watching and listening to Kevin Harlan all the time on the NFL and the NBA? And how about Draymond Green on the video? For those on the podcast that couldn't see it, he came right over to Reggie Miller, like banging his chest, like I made the defensive play. And Reggie standing up going, he wanted all the smoke. That was great TV. Right there, Mike.
Yeah, I'm a big Harlan guy. I love him in pretty much everything he does, but I think in terms of my favorite would probably be him doing the NBA. Reggie Miller does get criticized a lot. Some people, like everybody, polarizing guy. Where's Reggie going for once the games are off?
I believe he's going to be one of the lead analysts on NBC, if I'm not mistaken. We'll double-check that in a second.
And Harlan, we don't know where he's going, right?
Yeah, we got to double-check if they're going to be together. I mean, it would make sense on where they would end up. I'm also looking here to see what the ratings off the weekend got. You may have that info as well from all the different NBA games. I would assume that Lakers T-Wolves game Sunday afternoon on ABC had to have 5 or 6 million people watching. Network TV in the afternoon, it was the Lakers. We'll see what some of the audience has been for some of the other games in a few moments. But yeah, I mean, I love Reggie Miller as the former player to give us the insight, especially at the playoff level. Etc. Miller will be the lead game analyst for NBC next year. It's believed that he's going to be paired with Mike Tirico most of the time, Mike Gill, on NBC. Kevin Harlan is reportedly going to Amazon, and would obviously, I don't know if Miller also is going to have simultaneously a deal with Amazon or not to do an occasional game with him, but it looks like it's going to be Mike Tirico and Reggie Miller as the lead most of the time with Baby Bird, Noah Eagle, and Dwayne Wade as the second team on NBC. Harlan would likely be the first team guy on Netflix, but Ian Eagle is also there as well for the Amazon coverage of the NBA that's going to be upcoming. So there you go on that. And I was looking for the ratings. I wasn't able to find anything in the immediate, but I would bet their audience was up. And the audience probably from Monday night with that Warriors-Rockets. Houston's a major market, and the Warriors and Rockets probably got Turner like 3 or 4 million, I would think, on Monday night as a standalone game, Mike Gill.
Yeah, and as we were talking about, you lose the Lakers, you're going to get a hit a little bit in that aspect. But again, if you can get the Warriors through there, the Knicks and the Celtics, as you mentioned, I think that they should be pretty good with at least that crew in there. I mean, the Lakers are certainly the biggest draw, but you get Boston, you get New York. You certainly get helped from that crew there. Now,
well, you're gonna have a hit though. I mean, Indiana, Oklahoma City, Minneapolis for the T-Wolves, but you still get a mix in, as you mentioned, of the bigger market teams as well, because you're guaranteed a New York or a Boston ends up making the Eastern Conference Final. That'll help.
Yeah. Now, one big thing is in the Western side, you got Oklahoma City, they've already advanced. They're going to go up against either L.A. or Denver. So, I don't know. The Clippers L.A. aren't the Laker L.A., but you get a huge L.A. market if the Clippers get through there. And they got James Harden, so there's a Harden against the Thunder. I know that goes back years from when he was there. The second round, though, a Warriors-Timberwolves. If you got the Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards, is he a big enough name now in his second deep run with Minnesota, and the way that
on Steph Curry and the Warriors to carry the West. I mean, you just are. You can say what you want about Denver winning the championship a couple years ago, but
Minnesota not a big market. But is Anthony Edwards a big enough draw to see him against Steph Curry? Can they really? Hey, Curry against the new kid on the block. That's probably how you have to play that.
Exactly.
And then on the East side, Cleveland's already in, not desirable. Milwaukee and the Pacers.
Indiana.
The Pacers are winning that series. A Cleveland, Indiana is a worst case scenario regardless, and that's what you're going to probably get.
But Cleveland ended up drawing some audience previously. There's history there. LeBron coming back. And Cleveland's had an outstanding year, and then you get them against New York and Boston. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say the NBA is going to do cartwheels and do great ratings, but they could do a lot worse than having a Cleveland against New York or Boston in an Eastern Conference final, which is what they're likely going to have. They're going to have.
And if you get Cleveland, obviously, and if they're you would rather Cleveland Bucks. At least you get Giannis, and then obviously Dame. But now Dame's out, so you lose Dame Lillard. You lost Giannis. You're getting the Pacers, who really just don't have a marketable guy. Halliburton is probably the biggest name there. So you're hoping Cleveland, with their record and the number one seed, carries that series. So that one's probably going to be a stinker ratings-wise, but the Celtics and Knicks, you make up for it over there.
All right, and one other interesting thing, the Cleveland clincher against Miami was a horrific watch. I was not actually watching, but I saw social media. It was 72-25 at one point in that game. Ernie Johnson actually was the one, not Barkley, who came out and basically said that is the worst playoff basketball game I may have ever watched.
Yep,
So
it was 43. It was 43-17 after the first quarter. The final was 138-83
to 25. 72-25 at one point. That was the lead in to Warriors Rockets, and I'll be curious when we find out the number later today or tomorrow. Did it do a little better? Will the NBA pick up? Again, the NBA audience has been down. Will it pick up a little bit now with the star team still in the playoffs? We'll see. Anything else? We've been here a little bit. Anything else on the Last Word on Sports Media podcast that we left out after talking a lot about the NFL and the NFL draft and Bill Belichick and controversies and the NBA? Anything else?
Well, there's a ton out there. I mean, obviously, Turner, more remote broadcast. They're getting blasted for that.
Did we not sit here and say, with the remote broadcast, with all the Western Canada teams, with the Canada teams and the Western Canada teams, that if the announcers are not there, the worst case scenario is if they lose the feed, and they lost the feed on the Montreal Capitals game in that Eastern Conference playoff series on Sunday night. They lost the feed completely and had to go to the Sportsnet Canada feed because there's no way for the announcers to see the game on TV.
It's Bush League. It's bad. By the way, some news just came in as we're having this conversation. We're live on the YouTube and on the X. Stan Van Gundy is going to go to Amazon, according to reports. So he will now be going as part of that Amazon
one of the analysts. And maybe they put him with Kevin Harlan, who he has worked with before, including in the NCAA tournament, on the Amazon coverage for the play-by-play. So interesting on that. But, yeah, back to the NHL. And you already have a playoffs that doesn't have New York and Boston and Philadelphia and Chicago and Detroit, and the Canadian teams all fall by the wayside usually by the second round. So we'll see if the NHL hangs in. Again, their Stanley Cup ratings will probably be 2-3 million, something like that.
By the way, there's some news in the college football world that this came out a little earlier. I forgot to bring that up. The Pac-2, the two teams, they have a media deal. The CW, ESPN, and CBS, you're going to get Washington State and Oregon State games.
Okay. So the interesting thing is they're going to be showing their games. They got to have a TV partner, and then they're going to include some Mountain West teams, which is the likes of Boise State, San Diego State, all the states, Colorado State, Utah State are going to join them. They eventually want to get to at least 10 teams and play a championship game, if not 12 teams. Is there really going to be a TV audience? The deal, I saw this with CW, is CW is going to show most of the games as they did last year for Oregon State and Washington State. ESPN, I believe, is going to show 2 games. CBS is going to show 2 games, and one of the CBS games is the Washington State-Oregon State game. The real question is, are these schools, when they pair together, are they going to get very much TV money on a long-term deal as a new constituted Pac-10 or Pac-12?
No, I don't see. If Washington State and Oregon State are your biggest 2 brands, you're not getting it. But hey, you could get something, and you could get. I advocate all the time, like, get creative, and we see the MAC Tuesday night, the MACtion.
Right.
This Pac-2 could be something that's on a Wednesday night, or something
Another
to that
night
effect.
a week. Yeah, maybe.
Yep.
All right.
The other thing, real quick, I don't know if you're watching any of this, but. Not great ratings for the UFL. Again, I watch a lot of this. I love the broadcast. I think they do a really good job.
Look, they are professional with it. Obviously, those that are involved realize this is a developmental situation for pro football and the NFL. But it's over, my friend, on whether anybody cares on TV. They have no attendance. I don't think America really cares about this as much as Fox and ESPN are still trying to push this. It's basically now the third reincarnation of what we had with the USFL in the early to mid 80s. This is the third different attempt with the
that made it though. Well, they were making it.
They did. Okay, but now the new incarnation of the XFL and the USFL merging together to call it the UFL. They've got some of the old logos from the USFL days and the XFL days. They merged this together. Fans are not watching on TV at all.
It's a shame, it's a shame only because, look, if you like football, the broadcast is very good, though. They bring you inside the play calls. You can hear them talking to each other. They bring in a lot of elements.
Quarterback communication, offensive coordinator communication, defensive guy. They're interviewing people during the game while the game's going on. There's more of that. But again, if you're not even drawing a 500,000 people, if you're struggling for that to watch, much less 1 million people, I don't know the longevity of this when no one shows up and buys a ticket.
No.
I don't know.
Well, St. Louis draws very well, by the way.
Do.
I will say, I don't understand all of these spring leagues that have, emerged over the years, the XFL, the USFL, the UFL,
Alliance of American
the
Football.
AAF.
Yeah.
Why they can't get higher profile quarterbacks that were stars in college that don't make it to the NFL? Like, can't they get a guy who has some name? Like, you can't tell me that Luis Perez is better, or they always get these quarterbacks that no one's ever heard of.
But part of it is they don't make anything in the UFL, and if you're a backup even in the NFL, you're making 2, 3, 4 times.
Yeah, but there are guys who aren't even that were college
on NFL rosters, right?
Yeah, that aren't on NFL rosters that have higher profile names. Yeah. I can't even tell you who some of these, like the guy who played McCarron from Alabama. A.J. McCarron.
He's the Battlehawks, the St. Louis quarterback.
He was a year or so ago. You knew who he was. You've heard of him. And look who's the most popular team in that league. The Battlehawks. They have a huge following. You knew who the quarterback was. Now, I mean, you don't even know who half these guys are, where they're coming from. That's if you can regionalize, it's almost like back in the day, you play American Legion baseball. You could only be from certain colleges to high schools to play on the team.
Right.
Like maybe you regionalize. You have to be from these colleges to play on that team.
I got to share with you one more time. The ship has sailed. It was a big deal back in the 80s. They've tried several incarnations. People aren't watching. They don't care about the spring football anymore. They care more about the Savannah Bananas, which we got to go here in a second. But the Savannah Bananas just played at Clemson's Memorial Stadium, which is in the area, in the region where they're based. But they've been playing all over the place. They played in Nashville. They played in Tampa in football stadiums. Mike, they had 81,000 people come to the game. And again, the games are not spoofs because the team that they're playing has players and pitchers that can play, and they're playing a real game. And the team that is playing the Bananas, the All-Stars, whatever their name is, they've beaten the Savannah Bananas
Party
over and
animals.
over again. Oh, the party animals.
Yeah.
The party animals are competitive. The kids love this. The families love this. ESPN has embraced it, and they're showing it on ESPN and on YouTube.
Listen.
There is an audience for that. Unfortunately, spring football is the latest thing that there just does not appear to be audience for.
There isn't. It just, I'm just letting the people know it is a quality broadcast. They bring you inside the huddle. They let you hear the play calls. They give you a lot of things that you're not getting in an NFL game. The quality of play isn't horrible. You just don't know a lot of who these guys are. But
the Bananas, the Bananas are doing fun things with music and different spoofs and then actually still playing the game. And again, I might have said 81,000 people at Clemson's Memorial Stadium came to watch what this is, which is baseball done differently, done creatively, done with a marketing purpose, and it is working right now. Kudos to them with what they've been able to do. Are we good? I think we're good on this edition. I know you need to get rolling as we do this live. You do your afternoon show, the Sports Bash, weekdays 2 to 6 in Atlantic City on the ESPN affiliate. Again, make sure you find us if you're watching us on video and podcast, Apple, Spreaker, Spotify. If you're only hearing us on the podcast, come find the video, Mike Gill Show YouTube page, as well as social media, his and mine at Mike Gill Show. Find me at Buck Sideline Guy. Anything else in closing, Mike Gill? Are we good?
That's it for me. I think we hit on a bunch. There's plenty more out there. I'm very intrigued by all the stuff that's going to be happening with where Major League Baseball is going to go with all the regional sports networks. You know what I found last night? Apple TV Plus has a thing called Late Innings, and it's almost like a kind of a whip around thing. I didn't know they had it before. I sat there and watched baseball all over the place. It's every night of the week, apparently.
The MLB network does a similar thing when they don't have a game, where they sit there and put the quad box up and you're watching all of the games as they come to a finish, etc. So they're trying different creative things. But the Savannah Bananas have more interest in audience right now and attendance than a lot of Major League games. That's not good. They got to figure it out. All right, I think we are good. There you go. All things NFL draft, Bill Belichick and his much younger girlfriend, Shedeur Sanders, NBA playoffs. I think we've covered it all. Mike, great stuff. Thank you, my friend. Good stuff.
We'll talk again.
There you go. We thank you for being with us on the Last Word on Sports Media podcast.